Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to Mr. Herring's fifth grade social studies class. Today we'll be discussing the comparing of the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies by highlighting characteristics of each on a colonial regions chart. Our essential question: how did the British colonies lay the foundation of our modern economic system? Last week in class, we made a 13 colonies map where we labeled all 13 colonies as well as labeled all of the symbols that represent the resources in each of the three regions. This was important because it guided us to help understand why the settlers settled where they did, why the colonists chose the ways they did to make a living, and that was based on the resources and the geography that was available to them. Today, we are going to wrap that up by comparing these three regions using four characteristics: the reasons for being founded, the geography of the region, the economy in the region, and the government. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we do get too deep, we are going to discuss six very important vocabulary words. First is cash crop. Cash crop is a crop that is grown to sell rather than to be used by the grower. This is very essential, especially in the southern and middle colonies, because there were large farms in the south and some smaller farms in the middle and even in a couple in the north. But cash crop was the first way they made their living because they were able to grow crops that were not in England and they could sell them back to England. The next word we need to know is free enterprise system. This is an economic system in which people are free to start their own businesses or do whatever they want. This is very important because in the 13 colonies, it was very much a free enterprise system. Of course, England demands that they only trade with England, and the colonies kind of ignore that. But we'll talk about that later on in Unit 3. The next word is indentured servant. We know that an indentured servant is a person who agrees to work for a set period of time without pay in exchange for necessities such as transportation, food, clothing, and shelter. Very different than slavery. We've discussed this in great depth in class, that an indentured servant agreed to work for free, where slaves were not given that choice, of course. The indentured servant would work for about 7 years, in which time they were set free from their contract and in many cases even given land by the owner of the property they worked on to start their own life. And then we have monarch, which is a ruler. Quite simply here, it's king, king or queen. In this case, for the next unit, essentially we'll be talking about King of England. And the next word is profit. That's the money a business earns after all its expenses are paid. This is a big one. We talked in class about the lemonade stand where your parents allow you to sell lemonade to make some extra money. They give you money to start your business, start your lemonade stand. You go out, you buy everything you need, you sell your lemonade, and then all the money you make, you take that money and you have to pay back your parents. Whatever you have left after you pay back your parents would be your profit. And finally, we have slavery. Slavery is the practice of owning and controlling people against their will. They are not given a choice. They are controlled without their consent. And this becomes a huge industry in the colonies. Very profitable for many of the plantation owners and farms in the South especially. And eventually will become the biggest dividing factor in the 13 colonies later on. All right, so let's look at a projection map, a Robinson projection map for a second. I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of things. Looking at this map, England is over here. The 13 colonies are here. Well, actually right there, not Florida. And so there's about 2,000 miles roughly in between the two colonies over that Atlantic Ocean. And this is important to know because the colonies are harvesting all these materials like lumber, and they're making ships, and they're growing tobacco and things like that. And all these indigo, rice, all these products and these resources that are harvested in the colonies are sent back to England as raw material, okay? Tobacco in crates. And then England takes all that raw material and they make things to sell, like cigarettes or they furniture from all the wood that's sent over to them, or even boats and things like that. And what they do in return is they send that finished product back to the colonists and sell it to them. And so this is a huge racket for England. They're making money hand over fist because they're getting all these materials for free. They're not paying for the materials. They are demanding that New England or the colonists harvest them. In some cases, they pay for them, but most times they don't. And so this becomes a big problem for the colonists because they want to trade within themselves. They want to use that free enterprise system, and England demands that they trade with them only. And this will become a huge rift between England and the colonies eventually. But I just want to give you an idea of geography here, where we are. England being so far away, and these people way over here across the Atlantic Ocean, across the pond, are telling these people what to do, which are so far away. And again, that will become another problem. So let's go ahead and talk about these three regions. Okay, let's start with the New England region. The New England region, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and of course, Connecticut. Um, they had specific reasons for being founded. Um, Puritans wanted a place to practice their religion. So, of the three G's, they were using the G, God, right? They wanted religious freedom. Um, it's a big following. They come over and they establish. In Massachusetts, however, they run into a little problem. There are two colonists named Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, and they kind of fight back. They don't agree with how things are being run, they don't agree with how things are being done, and so they fight back with the leadership of Massachusetts, and eventually they are banished. They are kicked out of the region, and this is a big problem. In Rhode Island, of course, people want to be able to practice a different religion than everybody else. Um, so Roger Williams will go to Rhode Island and he will start his own colony there. He becomes the leader of Rhode Island. Anne Hutchins will follow him, of course, and so he starts his own place. His people, he has his own following. They follow him, and he's allowed to practice the way he wants to practice. The geography of this region in Massachusetts, in the northern part of it, it's very rocky soil. They have large forests. They get all the trees, the lumber. They've got very clean water, but the winters are very cold. In the southern part of this region, you have the Narragansett Bay. I have a hard time pronouncing that. They have several rivers. They've got forests for good lumber. They've got good soil for small farms in the southern part, but the winters are very harsh and they have long summer rains. The economy, how they make their money, they have small farming, they have lumbering, they harvest the lumber and send it back to England. They have fishing, they have shipbuilding, and then whaling becomes pretty popular. In the southern part of this region, again, they have small farms. They trade in this region with the Native Americans. Um, they do a little bit of slave trading, but not nearly as much as the South. They have fur trapping, which is what leads to the fur trading with the natives, and they sell the fur back to or get the fur back to England. And of course, they have lumbering. The government in the North, at first, only the Puritan men could vote, but later on, all men who own land could also vote. So you see who's being left out here. Women are not allowed to vote. In the southern part, all men could vote, but then later they decided that only men who owned property could vote. So you had to be kind of a wealthy person, wealthy man, in order to vote. All right, let's talk about that middle colony section. The middle colony section, right in the middle, and it's where we have New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware in the middle. The reason for founding, the Dutch people originally came here looking for fur trading posts, to set up fur trading posts. They wanted to get into the fur trading business. So their reason for coming would be the G of gold or wealth, um, financial wealth, or improving their wealth. Of course, the British will capture it, so New Englanders could move west. It starts out as New Netherland, um, because the Dutch came here first, but eventually it would be named New York. The geography of the northern part had a great harbor, New York Harbor, had good rivers, valley, had iron, but the winters were very cold and the hot summers were brutal. In the southern part, down in Pennsylvania, let's finish. Let's do the economy in the north. There were farming, mining, lumbering, trapping, and trade. The waterways are used for transportation. In this region, especially New York, was awesome because the rivers could go way deep into the region, which made it very easy to bring their products in and out. The government, only a governor appointed by the British king could choose other officials. There was no voting system, not by any means. Only the governor could choose the leaders of the settlements in the region. Now in the South, let's talk about Pennsylvania. This kind of applies to New Jersey and Delaware as well. But in the South, William Penn came and he wanted to start a colony for his Quakers. They needed a place where they could practice their religion safely, so they came for the reason of God. They wanted that religious freedom. The geography in the South, it had lots of forests. Had the Delaware River, which is a good thing. Had a valley, river valley, the rich soil for small farms. But the big one in this region, they had a lot of coal. They get coal from the ground, which allows them to make a lot of heat, which is a good thing. Had good rivers, but the temperatures were very cold and very, very harsh. The economy, they had small farming, lumbering, but mining is the big one in this region, in the southern part of this region. The government, the British king approved and appointed the governor. Male property owners were allowed to vote for General Assembly members, so there's a little bit of some democracy there, but not as much as they would hope. Right, and then the southern colonies of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, along with Maryland, quite different than the other two. The reason these were founded, Maryland was founded by Celsius Mr. Calvert, Lord Baltimore, to make money and create a safe place for the Catholics. This is a big one. You're going to see this on the test, okay? The southern colonies, Maryland, they came, the Catholics established here. But in Georgia, this is very interesting. In the Georgia colony, Great Britain wanted to keep Spain from moving north. So they sent colonists to Georgia to help defend Spanish forces from moving north. But what they also did was if you broke the laws in other colonies, they would send you to Georgia, and it would help the debtors avoid prison. If you couldn't pay your debts, your taxes, and you didn't want to go to prison, you could move to Georgia and help defend the colonies from the Spanish. The geography in the northern part had the Chesapeake Bay, had great farmland, easy access to the sea, but it had some very hot and steamy and humid summers, which was great for crops, especially tobacco, and then later on white gold, which is cotton. In the southern part of the region, a lot of swampland. In the south, forests. In the north, mild winters and hot, humid summers. The economy, as you would expect, in the northern part, Maryland, in northern Virginia, they had small farms. They had lumbering, shipping, fishing, cattle, and of course the slave trade would be a big one. In the South, you had huge farms, some lumbering and some trade. But in the South is where you get all the great plantations, the really, really large farms. The governments are very similar. In the northern part, at first a governor made the decision. Later, they allowed white male property owners could vote for assembly members. In the South, very similar. Only those who founded the colony could participate. But later, the king controlled the colony and allowed white men to vote for assembly members. There'll be a large influx of black populations into this region because of the slave trade. All right. So in a nutshell, that is comparing the colonial regions. Hopefully, when you get your notes, you can highlight things that are important in class. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, and much of this will be on your tests, but you'll be able to practice with quizzes. All right. So this will get glued into your journal. See you back in class. Hope you have a great day. See you next time, guys.